risk? Could it be a whole bunch of things that you don't know?
It could be a whole bunch of things.
How many do you know? How many do you believe were theft?
I don't think I have that answer. What I do know is the 19% didn't follow the transaction process that we have, and we genuinely believe that the potential risk to the company is upwards of $1 million.
Can I just make sure I understand these? So 28% are non-cash rate. So that could be an employee coming in with a card, or it could be somebody just dropping off. And of those 28%, 19 were at
19% of them we
risk?
couldn't justify.
Okay.
So
that 19% of the 28% or 19% total?
19% total.
Okay.
So here's a question. If you were taking in $6 million in parking revenues, what percentage of that is cash transactions and what percentage of that was debit and credit?
I'll have to get that to you afterwards.
Because, I mean, obviously, not all of that $6 million is cash business.
No, it's not, but it is a heavily cash-focused business, as most of you will appreciate.
You have camera footage or captures, images. How many are you, when are you handing that over to the cops? How much do you have?
We have essentially the audit period around camera transactions. Our booths don't have cameras on them on a full-time basis. We do have information around accounts, and then we have information around who the cashier was around the till transactions at the time.
How?
So we're packaging it now.
You'd like to have a picture of someone stuffing cash into their pocket?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't. And I think it's really important that you recognize that this is, it is a volume game and it's a cash transaction. And unfortunately, they'll always come with risk. And I suggest if you speak to any parking authority, they would suggest that it is a high-risk scenario. And when your process isn't being followed, which is where I think we as management have fallen, then risk happens. And we had breach of process that we had not been managing to the fullest of our abilities, and we believe we are.
And just to clarify, so the police are meeting now, or they will be? What's the status of the police?
The police have been informed. Our legal team are preparing the information that we have. If there's proof that can be found related to specific individuals, our board has given us direction to take criminal action.
The police told me today they've had no complaint filed.
We've just made them informed that this issue is happening.
So of these employees, were any of them full-time? What kind of wages did they make?
We could get you the details on the spectrum.
Yeah.
The bulk of them were part-time employees, but there were some very long-standing employees that were in that mix, which makes it that much more difficult.
And
So
what's
what
this?
did you say to those employees that you called exceptional? Or what did you tell them? Do you have a message for them now?
It was a very holistic change,
What does that
unfortunately.
mean? Like, can you just talk in like real
Yeah.
terms?
So the real terms were, we have 1,700 employees.
No, it's just like, do you have a message for those employees who are exceptional? Like, what do you tell them about why they're so small?
We would tell them with clarity that not everybody was at fault in this. This was a reaction for the betterment of the company, related to $1 million in potential risk.
So wait a minute, $1 million of potential risk, or $1 million that you know is not there? Is it hypothetically that you might have lost $1 million, or did you lose $1 million?
It's not that easy of a question, to be honest, because the $1 million is based on the type of volume you see at the building. Our parking revenue right now stands about $6 million a year. What we do know is 19% of those transactions haven't followed proper process, and we do know the risk is somewhere between $700,000 and $1.2 million.
So is this potentially a case where people let their friends in too many times or didn't charge for this, but they didn't take any money at all?
It could be that.
And at that meeting, when you sat those employees down and told them they were going to be terminated, did you apologize? Would you have an apology for the ones that you know are exceptional that you had to let go?
As an employer, you never want to let anybody go. You truthfully don't. And those people were people that you interacted with on a daily basis. But quite frankly, there was $1 million risk. And our job as an executive job, and my job as a president and CEO, is to insulate our company against risk.
So
But you're saying that $1 million risk is a hypothetical, but in the press release you say theft. Do you have any evidence that there was actual theft as opposed to people just not following the protocol?
So I don't think we've issued a press release on this. We've issued a statement.
Well,
Your statement said that.
the statement said theft.
What we do know is that there's 19% risk.
Do you regret saying the word theft?
No, I don't at all.
Okay.
But do you have
Still
any
stand
evidence
by
that any money is actually missing?
Yes, we do.
As opposed, okay, so that's different than saying there's a 19% chance that some went missing.
No, what we know is that money has gone missing. We know that for a fact.
How much?
I don't have that answer.
Ballpark figure.
$1 million.
Well,
$1 million at risk, but how much has gone missing?
You're taking a small sample size and you're extrapolating, correct? Is that what you're doing?
Maybe not a small sample size. We took our busiest period in the organization where we see, just under 1 million visits. And so I would say we took our largest sample size that we could have had with K-Days.
But you said to us that you didn't see any evidence of people taking money, and
No,
He did
to be
see
clear,
evidence of that.
we did see evidence of people taking money.
And
Very,
that's
very
the
clear.
evidence in 12 to 19% of all transactions? Okay. Evidence that people were taking money in 12 to 19% of all
or is that 12 to 19% weren't following procedures? These are two very different things.
12 and 19% weren't following procedures. Within that, we know that there was legitimate theft that occurred.
How much?
$1.05 at K-Days.
That comes down to what you can prove.
And that's what you're saying. The audit showed $1.05 was not
Yes.
there at K-Days. Extrapolate over the year, that's $1 million out of here.
Yes.
Can you put us in the room? You let everyone go. Did anyone put up their hand and say, I know who's behind this? Or you shouldn't be firing me because it's this guy over here?
There was a lot of people that said that you shouldn't be firing us, quite candidly. But that's an employee matter. There was no allegations that were specific to say this individual did it. There was a lot of anger, which you would expect, and a lot of frustration. It's never a pleasant moment, quite candidly. You never want to go through
But
as an
no
organization.
ringleader emerged from
It
that?
didn't.
Tim, Councillor Michael Oshry said that Northland's administration should have known earlier that this could have been happening for more than the last year, that someone should have found out. How do you respond to that?
What I can do is I can speak to the process that we had. I do think we had strong process in place. I think it wasn't always being followed, which was risk that we should have identified with. I will say that I think we took the right steps by bringing independent audit in, letting them peel through all of our process and all of our books and come up with a recommendation. And I think we implemented as quickly as we possibly could have, once we knew there was fact that there was risk to the corporate bottom line.
An employee told me that we had put a policy a few days before they actually got laid off that tightened the procedures and monitor their work. Why would you put in a policy like 2 days before laying them off?
We'd actually started that process probably a month earlier. And part of the reason that we felt quite confident in our results is we started to see immediate positive revenue side based on reoccurring events. So events such as Comic-Con showed a disproportionate bump in revenue versus prior year. So it was about 30 days before we made this decision. And we did start to see results with our annual repeat events that suggested that the revenue lines were higher based on these new policies and process being implemented.
So why didn't you just stay with that policy then?
Because we couldn't reduce the risk fast enough. Our partner in EIA suggested that you were going to burn about $100,000 a month in shrinkage before you could get to the bottom of this. It was going to take 4 months. And that was a risk that we as a corporation were willing to take.
So it wasn't going to invest because your statement implied that it was going to cost you $400,000 to carry out an internal investigation. What you're saying is that actually
It would have been lost revenue.
it would have been lost hypothetical lost revenue if it hypothetically took 4 months.
Yeah, the cost would have been substantially less,
Okay.
actual cost. But it would have had a cost to the company.
Eventually, if Councilor Gibbons is right, you're going to have a parking right system here for the downtown.
Does this affect that?
I would say, if anything, it probably positively affects it. One of the challenges is the scalability of your parking opportunities. And so if you want to run a parking ride system, or if you want to run events, an automated system would allow you to